Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. Sorry about that. My computer decided to have a brain fart. Yeah, I know. I changed settings and it shut out. Okay, general. New virtual cam. Subscriptions, snapshots, recordings, video. Audio. Game. Well, that's as good as I can get it, I'm afraid. It just does not want to cooperate. Alright, that's as good as I'm going to get it. It looks like. I'm pretty much convinced that somewhere, hidden somewhere inside every computer is a do not suck button. Are you still out there, folks? This thing, my bit rate is in the toilet. I think I need to call. I'm starting to think I need to call my internet service provider because my bit rate, according to I checked this upload speed test results. It says I've got 3.5 megabytes per second for upload. That's quote 72% slower than my host average of 12. 2% slower than the city average, and 64% slower than the US average. Suddenlink, you bastards. I got a testmy.net. TESTMY.NET. You can test your download rate, your upload rate. Yeah. I think I'm going to be calling Suddenlink. They've raised my rates. Over the past year, they've raised my rates from like $49 to $60 a month. And if this is what they're doing, what was I wanting to talk about? Oh, all sorts of things. Which I've mostly forgotten. My. Yeah, I'm going to have to call Suddenlink, and I'm going to have to go round robin with them. And they're going to lie, and they're going to deny that they're providing me poor service. And well, that's my life. The download test. Okay, I've got a download. Yeah, I'm getting, according to this, I'm getting at least 20% slower service than the average for my service. The download isn't a big deal for me. The download isn't a big deal for me, even though it's slower than the host average. It's still better than the city average and the U.S. average by a good percentage. But the upload speed is a mess, and I'm really improve up now to up. Now, according to this, I'm getting an upload rate last test said 3.5 megabytes, which should be more than enough. That should be more than enough. And I'm getting 4.4 now. So that should be more than enough for the upload rate. So why isn't it working right? I'm tired of dealing with this. My feeling on technology is that you should turn it on and it should go. And it should not be released to the public until it reaches that level. Otherwise, you're selling a shoddy product. Ever since the invention of the internet, software designers, hardware designers, computer programmers, internet service providers, I mean, you talk about fraud. Imagine if you could exist in a company where your product could literally kill people and you would not be held accountable. That's where software companies are today. Imagine if you ran a company where you could, deny service that people paid for, just so you could pander from one group to the next. That's what the internet service providers want to do. They talk about how removing net neutrality would mean that they could improve all sorts of. They're not going to improve anything. Improving internet service would involve building new transmitters, laying new cable, building new servers, the whole 9 yards. They're not going to do that. They would much rather offer their current shoddy product at a higher price. Just like anybody else. Oh, let's be honest. Now, this is one thing you have to understand about basic economics. Basic economics is a human condition. And if you do not acknowledge human nature, the study of economics is going to kick your high end all over the planet. The profit motive is a natural instinct of all living things to gain as much as it can while expending as little as they can. It's neither a vice nor a virtue, a necessity. If you spend more calories hunting down your food than get back out of it, you die. If you spend more money introducing a new product to the marketplace than you make from selling it, you go broke and bankrupt and go out of business. And if you decide to, work 18-hour days for a nickel a day, you die. Because you will work yourself to death and you will starve to death on it. So every living person, a person who goes and applies for a job, their goal is to do as little work as possible for as much money as possible. That's not laziness. That's just economics. Meanwhile, the guy that's running the company, his goal is to get as much work out of his workers for as little money as possible. That's not evil, greedy baronism. That's common sense. It's when people take it and use unethical practices to achieve that goal that it becomes a vice. A person who refuses to do work at all when he's on the clock, he's no longer negotiating, he's bilking someone. The guy who cheats somebody paycheck, or pull shuck and jive so that he doesn't pay him the full amount. That's not frugal. Being a frugal businessman, that's being a crook. All transactions have to be voluntary, fully informed, and both parties have to agree to it. If they are not amenable to that agreement, then it's not a legitimate solution. You don't get good workers by forcing people to work for you by denying them other options, which is what a lot of robber barons used to do back in the. Everybody likes to blame that on capitalism. That wasn't capitalism. That was cronyism. these robber barons who were the friends of those in power finagled the system so that they didn't have to pay their workers what they were earning. They set up systems so that the workers were going in debt to the company. You've heard the stories of the company store, where instead of getting paid in money, they're paid in company script, which they could spend at the store. Problem is that store, the prices would be jacked up through the roof, and the people living in the mining town or whatever would be too poor to travel out of town to find some, they would be too poor to travel and find somebody else who would pay them a fair, charge a fair price for a loaf of bread. So they'd end up having to run up debt to the company store just to keep themselves fed. It was a dirty practice. I'm getting off track here, but needed to be said. You take the desire to make as much as possible, the desire to take in more while expending less is a biological necessity. How we go about that process is where morals and ethics come in. Now, these corporations, these companies that run the internet, in order to improve their service, consider what they have to do. Right now, most of the internet is still landline, computer, telephone lines, cable lines. They have to plant telephone poles. They have to dig ditches and lay cable. And they've got to run through all the, they got to get all sorts of permits. They got to pay people for running lines through their land and all these other things. So improving their service is a costly proposition. Now, there are some companies that are coming out with new ideas, basically a fully wireless internet. It looks very interesting. It looks very promising. Elon Musk is one of the guys that's talking along those lines. But I'll cheer the guy on, But these traditional internet service providers, they're stuck with an infrastructure that is very difficult for a great number of bureaucratic reasons to upgrade, and yet they're promising that somehow being able to charge different people different prices for the same service will enable them to be more fair and make everybody a better internet service. The Bible talks about that. It says one of the things when the Bible called something an abomination, this was that's when the language was getting serious. It talked about things like adultery, rape, murder, those kinds of things, sodomy and bestiality. They would call it an abomination before the eyes of God. But one of the other things that's listed as an abomination, trading with diverse weights, using diverse weights. If you remember the movie The Karate Kid Part 2, where they go to Okinawa, and there's this one scene where by accident Danny discovers that the bad guy, the bad guy's punk nephew, is cheating people. He's the bad guy's nephew is out there paying people for their vegetables, or buying and selling, and buying their vegetables, Danny shows up and the guy tells him to shove off and knocks him over. And the weights and the scale falls over, and Danny knows that he picks up one of the weights and he breaks it in half, and it's styrofoam. The punk nephew had been swindling these people, and all heck broke loose. And that's what they were talking about when it says diverse weights, where they used a scale. They'd use one scale for one person and a different scale for another. There's a reason the devil is called, all of his titles, the devil is called the father of lies. Deception, deceit, misinformation, lies, falsehoods. And offering a service, charging everybody the same price, and then half-assing it for some of them, so that that's deceitful. Or worse, charging different people higher prices for the same product. That's obscene. Considered an abomination. This is what these ISP providers, these internet service providers, are proposing. They wanted to eliminate net neutrality. Net neutrality basically said that they had to charge the same price for the same bandwidth, regardless of who they were giving it to. They want to have, they want to charge different rates for access to the same internet, and no. I'm sure they could make all sorts of profits that way. I could make all sorts of money robbing banks, too. Now, to be fair, they can help a lot of it. Think about it. There's only one set of lines. There's only one set of telephone lines. It's not like every company on the planet is going to lay a new set of telephone lines to your house, just to compete. God only knows how they arrange that. I don't understand the intricacies of the system. How 3 different companies can have the same telephone lines. I don't know. I love what I find Roseanne Barr. Roseanne Barr. You've all been seeing the news lately. I've been seeing it on my Facebook feed. She was coming, they were having a comeback show for her, right? She's going to start up the show again. And everybody's going on about how she's come out, very, conservative, right-wing, pro-Trump show. And she apparently said something that was interpreted as racist on Twitter, and now they're canceling the show because of it. And I'm like, you people have no memory. You people have no memory. I watched the show when it first came out, okay? I remember the show. I remember the woman. That woman is the nastiest, stankest, most libertine, left-wing, trailer trash. She's not conservative. Not by light years. Her show, by the time it ended, it was doing nothing but trumpeting how wonderful it was to be gay. This woman is not conservative. But she's playing people like a harp. She is. And she's living to their she's living down to their expectations. She played trailer trash. Basically, she played a TV show where she was poor white trash along with the rest of her family. And of course, with the comeback, she's poor white trash and she's a Trump supporter. Yeah, that's a real fair representation of the conservative viewpoint, don't you think? I mean, the woman anti-Christian too. It's just missed no opportunity to mock. They had an episode where I didn't see the episode because I heard about it and I was like, oh, good grief, change the channel. Where her son becomes a born again Christian. Of course, didn't even want to see how they were going to handle that one. They had an entire episode where her house full of drag queens dressed up for Halloween. Yeah, real conservative. Yeah. She's trying to hook her wagon to a star here. She saw what happened with Last Man Standing, a comedy show. What was his name? Tim Allen from Home Improvement. He had the next show, that new show, and they canceled it because he was too conservative. And they keep bouncing it channel to channel, and you promise, we're bringing it back. We're putting it back out. We're not putting it back out. That nonsense. She decided that worked for, well, it worked for Tim the Two-Man Taylor. It'll work for little old Roseanne Barr. Yeah. Now, I won't deny that it's quite possible that in the intervening decades, in the intervening years, that she could have, someone can become more conservative in outlook. But knowing, just as messed up as that woman was, as her show was, no, not a chance. What I'm more afraid of is that she's exactly the same as she used to be, and that's not crazy liberal enough for her friends in Hollywood. Testing, testing, testing. Okay, the sound seems to be more or less smoothing out. Bad low video output. Go get your friends, make them watch. Make them sit down in front of the computer screen. This is stupid, I don't care, sit down and listen. I haven't been doing very much drawing. I've been doing a lot more writing. Really, I need to be doing more drawing. But, let me show you what I've you know how it is. You know what it is. Let's see here. I've been doing a lot of work for a fellow by the name of Wild Wired Weasel. He's coming out with a game. From what I understand, he needed a lot of illustrations. I've still got a couple more illustrations that he's commissioned I've got to sit down and do. But he's trying to do his own interesting spin on various fantasy creatures and so on and so forth.